Welcome back to the AI Innovation Business Podcast with Daniel Halbert. Today's guest is someone who embodies adventure, resilience, and leadership in the truest sense. Ariel Fishman, the founder of Adventure Israel, has spent decades combining outdoor wilderness coaching with personal and professional growth, helping individuals and organizations push past their limits. Ariel's journey began in upstate New York, where he was inspired by his father's deep love for adventure. That passion led him to establish remote expeditions in 2001 and later co-found Ace High School in Israel, where experiential learning meets real-world resilience. With certifications in wilderness survival, emergency response, and leadership coaching, Ariel has crafted transformative outdoor experiences that build confidence, teamwork, and personal breakthroughs. In this episode, we'll explore the power of adventure-based learning for leadership and resilience, how wilderness experiences shape character, decision-making, and mindset, the role of risk-taking, challenge, and discomfort in personal growth, stories from Ariel's experiences guiding and coaching people through extreme environments, and last but not least, lessons from the outdoors that apply to business, entrepreneurship, and daily life. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about pushing past your limits, embracing uncertainty, and unlocking the power of the wild in both life and business. Let's dive in. Ariel, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here, Naftali. Nice to see you. Nice to chat. And I do hope I could one day live up to that beautiful bio you just read.
Why, thank you so much, Ariel. Looks like you're on the trail right now, out there somewhere.
I am sandwiched somewhere between fields, amber waves of grain. Right now it's barley growing in one direction and there's grapevines behind me. And there's an olive tree immediately to my left.
Yeah, basically that's the only place that anyone's ever really found you. So makes perfect sense.
Yeah, this is where I'm most at home.
That's it. And of course, it brings back some fond memories to some of my formative wilderness experiences under your watch, under your keen eye, where I learned how to weather the storm of the elements, rain or shine. It's really special for me to have you on the call. I know that there are a lot of people out there that just have they love your vibe, basically. Your wilderness vibe, you become a symbol for overcoming all different types of adversity. And everybody's seen you jump off of a bridge or a cliff into some river or lake without any fear in your heart. And we've all said to ourselves, how can we be more like Ariel? It's happened a lot. And it's really great to hear that you've been blogging recently, getting into that. Through the power of your written word, you've been able to build and develop these relationships with all of us. We're able to kind of follow in your story and get a little insight into your mind. Your way of life has been inspiring for us, and you've been there for some very interesting moments for me.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Definitely there's a beauty in kind of coming full circle. The fact that I've known you for however many decades it's been, and even though at the time, as you mentioned, you were under the watchful eye as I was implementing programs that started off just as imagination and it turned into actual wilderness adventures, and you guys were part of that original crew back there, running around to the Northeast in any weather, any time of day, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And at the time, I wasn't too many years older, still not too many years older, just a bit. And this is full circle to kind of be in your watchful eyes now. This is your podcast, this is your show, and it's your audience, and it's an honor to be back here. And just like I said about the bio, I hope I could live up to what you said in the last bit as well, but, embracing challenges and somehow dealing with the fear that is in the heart. I just made it look like it wasn't. Did a pretty good job of that, apparently. But to be able to embrace fear and embrace challenge and turn it into something much more than just an emotion that blindsides you and creates an obstacle that is an impediment, but actually use it as a catapult. So yeah, this is nice. Nice to be sitting here specifically with you. There's a lot of people I could be chatting with right now, and I think for this conversation, you are the man that I would want to be chatting with.
Like Ariel, if I'm going to speak wilderness, it's going to be with you. I mean, remember when I was 16 and I was a little bit tired of hiking in the Catskills. I wanted something a little bit more out there.
Alaska.
So remember I said to you, I think I want to go to Alaska. I mean, first of all, I barely told a soul because I knew that if I started hearing people's feedback, it would, and I started to hear it. It was, you're never going to be able to do it. Very, very, very few people were willing to even entertain that I was considering this idea. And you know what? With your support, I was able to work out the logistics at that young age. Basically, pretend that I was like a 30-year-old organizing an expedition in Alaska for a month of August. 2 weeks of mountaineering, a week of sea
quite the
kayaking and
responsibility.
another ice climbing and rappelling into crevasses, that when we showed up, they found out I was the youngest guy on the trip.
Not surprising. Not surprising.
I just turned 17.
Deal with it, and it worked. It was a beautiful trip. I remember from watching from afar, being like jaw dropped jealous that you guys were out there at 17 years old. If you like Mordecai Baron and whoever, oh, not sure, I don't know if I could say names on the podcast. It was
Yeah.
and a couple other fellas, and you guys were rocking it, and they were loving you guys, and they were having a great time being able to be in that position of catering to people who really truly understood the underlying value that exists in being outside and being in nature and challenging yourself that way.
And interesting that we were basically a crew of guys that emerged from your program.
Yeah.
So
Happy.
I mean, saying the whole group, of us that attended, it was myself and four others that had all been. Actually, no, one was not in your program, but then the following year, you and I went together, and we worked for you in the Catskills. So every single person that went through that Alaska expedition was a part of the bigger picture that you had created. Interesting.
Honored to have been a little piece in that puzzle.
Well, I guess that there's a huge amount of thought that you've put into how can you inspire and create a new generation of leaders, and now you're starting to see that take shape. When I showed up to your program, I think I was like 14 years old, and now I'm 32. So it's been a huge amount of time. Now you could even do a proper longitudinal study.
It is. There is kind of this longitudinal study has been always going on in my head, watching where different people ended up. Some people really took the ball and ran with it. Some people, unfortunately, their challenges were just too great, or at least they perceived them to be too great, and they didn't end up running with that ball as far as maybe they could have, or I don't want to say the word should have, because there's no such thing as that. But there are the people amongst that original inner circle of guys in the program in the States, and then later on the program in Israel, that really became leaders in their field, whether it's in completely unrelated areas like marketing or therapy or education. Just they're rocking it in that game over there. And there's other guys who are in the security realm, elite soldiers. There's other guys who are sticking to education and the adventure sense, or guys who are, guiding their own trips. The study's in, the data's in, and the people who really embrace that methodology because they recognize how much it actually talks to their soul, or let's reframe that. They let it talk to their soul the way their soul needs to be spoken to. They're still living that to some capacity or another. Even if they're doing the marketing, they're still outside exercising and getting sun in their eyes and enjoying nature. Actually, just before we got onto the call, I don't want to say the name, someone who you know well, also from the program in the summer, told me he runs 2 to 3 times a week, and when he's not running, he's rowing or biking. Like, he's out every single day. This guy's doing tech work for a very big corporation in the States, office work, but he's out all the time. And when he's got free time with his family, he's out camping. There's something that's just for the right people. It sticks. And it's unfortunate that there are those people who it would stick for had they been exposed to it, but they're never exposed to it. And they don't even know that little puzzle piece that's missing in their life. There's a kind of what I believe is truly like a natural void that's not filled without being in nature. So it's nice to see the ones who kind of stuck with it and still embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that the kinds of participants that you had in your programs was diverse, but I think that I realized eventually that when you're dealing with teenagers, parents that are really making decisions a lot of the time. I mean, me and my buddies, we were looking for a wilderness program to attend. We were looking for mountains to conquer. We wanted that. We were thinking before we got there, we went and got gear that we were really excited to use, even though you told us we weren't allowed to have a tent. We had to sleep on a tarp under a tent. So that made it even more inspiring. I mean, our trips to Walmart with you were so important, because that was where we were able to gear up and get ready for the next excursion. So some of us were like that, adventurers. But then I remember some they were there because their parents were really concerned about their well-being, and they thought that they were really they were invested in what you were saying, which is nature as kind of the begin and end all cure for many different ailments that we kind of develop in the city. So maybe we could look at it and say, what happens when you take these participants and you put them back out into the city? What are they going to do? How do they know about what it's like to be out in the nature. Now they know it's like to be outside of a man-made world. When the tree in the forest is in control, there are more trees than there are people.
Right.
So how do you see when I think about all that, that's my connection that I developed with your guidance. I don't know if everybody got that message, but how do you think people kind of emerge from your program, and what kind of thoughts do you think are going through their minds when they look back, considering that you do see differences in the outcomes?
So that's a great question, because it's been decades since I started doing this, and I've seen generations of guys. I mean, at this point, actually, last year I think I took 3 different families. Not last year. Last year was a whole different story, which we'll get to, I'm sure. 2 years ago, across the summer season, I took 3 separate families, each of which were showing up with their own children, who for me it was like my grandkids in a certain sense. Like, these are people who had, as teenagers, did trips with me, and are now showing up and doing trips with me again with their own children. That speaks volumes. And these are not all people who are running around in the woods on their free time. And these are not people who are scaling mountains as their hobbies. These are people, a lot of them are just office jobs, but they've found a connection with nature. They also found a connection with adventure, which really, those are 2 totally separate things. For me, thankfully, they kind of jive, they go hand in hand. But you could like adventure, you could like motorcycles and just want to do 160 miles an hour on a highway. There's no nature in that. You could love nature and not like adventure. You just want to sit and look at the flowers. That's beautiful. There's a place for that, but it's not adventurous, right? So when you put those two together, you end up with this really unique constellation of emotions that can be worked with and goals that can be worked towards. And you mentioned risk taking. There's so much to unpack there. The students, the campers, the participants in programming, the fact that they stay in touch and come back with their kids, I think that kind of speaks volumes. Are there people out there who maybe can look back and say, oh my gosh, that was just too much for me? Like, those trips were too hard. I didn't particularly appreciate, hiking 25 miles in a day, finishing at night in the snow or in the rain and being blistered through and through and everything soaked to the bone. Like, I didn't really like that. There's going to be guys who would say that they would rather not have had that experience. I would say the overwhelming majority look back at that saying that was a formative experience. I remember that as an opportunity that I had in my life to push past my comfort zone and excel in something that I didn't even know I was good at. Now, that can translate. I've had guys who are not now, but a couple of years ago, a guy called me up while he was in training for a particular unit here in Israel. And he was telling me how some of the training involved crawling for hours, and his hands and knees just crawling through bushes and thorns and rocks. And he's like, it was fine. It was like, it didn't bother me. It wasn't any worse than what we did in the school. Like, this is what we did. Like, this was like, just reminded me of good times I had with my buddies when I was 16. So that's one avenue. And there are people who have called me and said, listen, I'm not doing this for work. I'm not doing this for the army. I'm not doing this for training purposes. I'm not doing this for my lifestyle, but I'm using lessons that I picked up in camp about responding to stimulus in a certain way, responding to fear, or engaging risk in a thoughtful manner. And they're putting that to their businesses. So overall, it's been the response longitudinally from all these different students, campers, participants on tours has been pretty consistently solid. That doesn't mean it's a panacea. It doesn't mean it can fix everything. The proof to that is my experiences last year. I'm the guy who's been pushing this on the masses for years. It's something I've always not just enjoyed, it's what I really deeply believe in, that you can use wilderness adventuring and you can use nature as a tool to build up the virtues you truly want to bring out to the world, that you want to bring out in your own life. When the circumstances here in Israel kind of crescendoed on October 7th, of all people, to not have the tools, or at least did not feel like I had the tools, it was me. So what happened to all of those virtues that I thought I was pulling out from the wilderness and the adventuring? That's a discussion in itself, which we can go in that direction or not. But there's definitely value in it. There's definitely value in it independent of anything else. There's value in it and it being integrated into other areas of your life that matter, where you take those virtues and you put them into your family, your relationships, your own self-discovery. And then there's the fact that life is life and there's no cure-all. There's no panacea. There's no perfect system. So I thought I had perfected it. I thought I had it. I thought if anyone's going to be able to rise to the occasion, it was going to be me. And I didn't. I dropped the ball. Like in every sense of the word. That being said, the bounce back that I'm experiencing now is a throwback to those original virtues that I thought I had. So in some sense, in my own experience, they are a panacea. For me, it is what I need. It's always what I believed in deeply to the core. I just wasn't able to pull them up at the very beginning of the challenges. I wasn't able to pull them up when I needed them most. But now I am. Now I'm reinstituting those values and reliving those same virtues that I've always believed in and shared with the people who are in earshot of me.
You know, it kind of makes me wonder. Like, I remember I had this idea in my head that if I'm with a group of people and then one of them I notice is particularly, they stick out in a great way for one particular reason, that I would like to tell them. And I would say it even in a group setting, like out loud, be like, George, you are such a great leader. You really know how to organize everyone here and keep things moving along at a good pace. It's really a thrill, you know? Thank you so much. And I noticed like I would say like that, for example, and I would walk away and I'd be like, hold on, so wait, so he's that guy? So wait a minute, who am I here? What's my role in this place? Because obviously George is doing that. So what am I doing?
Right.
And right, so I noticed somehow, some way that every single time I like gave out a compliment or something, it was almost like I was giving up a piece of my own self. Not
Giving up.
necessarily for like in that context, in that environment, in that scene, I had forfeited the right to hold that position. I had essentially given it over to this other person because whatever the reasoning might be, that's something which I also we could or could not explore. But the idea behind that is that I said, I'm going to stop doing it for a while, just in general. I'll give a compliment. I don't have an issue with that, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do it because it's not. And I'm going to see what happens with my energy level, and I'm going to see how it makes me feel. And I noticed that all of a sudden, if I'm in the room and I'm identifying that people have great qualities, but I'm not like going out of my way to like say like you're this and you're that, and I'm still walking around with all of that, all those cards are in my hand. I can still be that guy. I can still potentially, that can happen to me. Like I don't know what could be, but my bigger self is present in the room, and I'm not divvying out the things about me that I care about to others. And like so I'm just kind of thinking, like, in a funny sense, imagine if, like, after all the years, you look back and we thought about all the exercises and routines that we did, all the different competitions and trials and challenges, who gets to the top of the mountain first, who can fast the longest, who can read the most, whatever, learn the most, and be the toughest and jump from the highest place, right? And every single time once somebody does that, especially a child or a teenager, I remember you just go and you'd make it, not only tell them, but you make sure that everybody knew, right? And it's funny because every single person would look at you and say, wow, Ariel, like, I'm so excited. Like, whenever I got a compliment from you, it was like so good. And I really took on those parts into my identity. I just wonder what it left you with, in a certain sense, because you're playing a role. You're a guide. You're the adult. You're wearing a hat. But when you take off that hat, you're also another colleague. You're a friend. You're also a child, right? You also have an inner child that also has all of those qualities that you're seeing in everyone else. Maybe there's something funny, like there's almost like I can imagine like a cure-all, if you will, a cure-all scene. Each person has their own. I imagine a beautiful scene where you're walking up your favorite mountain. I don't know, which one is your favorite mountain out these days in Catskill?
It depends where I'm standing. There's lots of favorite mountains. There's so many favorite mountains. I mean, I have some right here that I can look at from where I'm sitting in the car, and there's ones that are further off on the horizon that I have to take a 12-hour flight to. And then there's the mountains I'm only dreaming of that's on my wish list to one day put my feet on top of.
We'll go, but I guess I'll just talk about Sugarloaf for now.
Sounds good. Dibble's Quarry on the way up.
Dibble's Quarry on the way up, and then you get isn't Throne over there somewhere? The Throne?
Yeah, that's on the Dibble's Quarry. That's where we built those giant thrones.
Oh, that's the Throne in Dibble's Quarry. Wonderful, wonderful. So let's just go with that. I like that one because there's also a lot of clover there. Clover there. Not cloves. No, clover. You can get a lot of clovers in there. You can survive off of it. I always figured that would be a place to go. So let's just say, that you're out there climbing this mountain together with every single person, every student, every participant, everyone that you had this positive interactions with all at the same time. Like imagine that you all hiking together. Like, but shoulder to shoulder, right? Because everyone's grown up now, right? And we're all good hikers. We're all seasoned, so we can do it. Each of us on our own could find our own way, but we're like hiking together, right? So yeah, I think that is like that scene in my mind, like that scene playing through your mind. To me, it feels like a beautiful, I don't know, some kind of magic potion, because I think that you may have, not necessarily, but you may find yourself in others because you saw greatness in others and you told them about it and you kind of gave it to them. But it's really yours, right?
It's a
You
really
got so
interesting
many.
analogy. I have, in an attempt to find security and stability in the body that I'm in and in the country that I'm in and the world that I'm in and the time period that we're in, I have dissected and parsed out every bit of my personality and history, experiences, and try to figure out like where did this come out. Never came across that specific perspective. That's interesting. I remember once speaking to a therapist years ago, and he said something along the lines of when you share too much, it's kind of like a static electric charge that builds up, and you need to hold it in for yourself. You need that energy. You need that charge for you to stay in you. And as soon as you share, you kind of overshare, maybe in regards to over complimenting or pointing out compliments of things that are virtues that you really want to have, or maybe you do have and are just not getting appreciated for. You did that little contact, that little zap. And as soon as you do that, that electric charge is gone, right? It's like there is value kind of holding it in, which is interesting. I haven't really thought about that since then until you said it now. But it's possible. It's possible that I am endlessly grateful that in the shoes that I'm standing in this moment, or shoes that I'm sitting in this moment, I am embodying and integrating and living with those virtues in a fundamental way. And it's also a fundamentally different way than it was before. It took the catastrophe of what happened October 7th and thereafter, of what happened to the world, what happened to our country, what happened to our nation, what happened to us, our families, our friends, and what happened to me. It took that to shake me up enough to be able to take the same virtues that I always thought I embodied and I always believed were true. And I always knew like these are the core things. Like if you want to line these up, I can give you like 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever you give me the number, I'll give you the bullet points. Like these are the qualities that we need to live virtuous lives of integrity and contribution to the universe. Like this is the way to get there. But it was never integrated to the point that it was embodied in every one of my actions and every one of my motivations. And now it's like, wait, this tragedy that has befallen us has actually become the growth pains that I needed to take those virtues. Okay, this time it's for real. And if you don't do it, it's not like those virtues are on the line. For me, with everything was on the line. There was no other options. You either live with those virtues because you know that's what's going to work. That's what's going to pull you out of this mess. It's going to be what's going to pull the people around you out of the mess that need the help. As opposed to not doing it was not just for going on the virtues. It's like, that's it. I had all the skin in the game. Yeah, I'm very grateful to be in a place where I say, okay, this is actually, those virtues are integratable. They are usable beyond the sense of jumping off a cliff, rappelling down a ravine, hiking through the dark, or spending hours and hours and hours in a cave far from anybody by myself. Like those are great, fun places to use it. They don't directly translate unless you're forced to translate them into other areas. But that's the beauty. I thought I had them. Then I lost the game. Then I realized I never really had them. And now I'm realizing I always did have them. I just needed this to implement it. I needed this experience to get to where it's actually implemented into my life. And it's been a ride. It's been a ride I wouldn't wish on anybody. That being said, I don't think I could be where I stand today without having gone through that. And I think all of my circles of influence are going to benefit from that. Certainly my family. I have to justify the hell I put them through with the fallout of this past year and a half. Part of that justification or redemption is to create a life for them that they have these tools way earlier in the game than I had them, that they have them from now, that they recognize that challenges are there to make you stronger, and not in the cliche sense, and not in the sense that I'm going to run an extra mile on this trail because I'll be stronger for it, but in the sense that these deeply troubling uncertainties and pain and concerns about the future that we are all facing, those too are there to make us stronger. And it's not a cliche statement. You actually can get stronger from them. You can become, there's all these different terms people are throwing around. You mentioned resilient. There's a term from anti-fragile. There's really a term for business, but you pull it into psychology as well. You can get stronger because you get battered. There's stoicism mixed in there, but of course there's our own culture and our heritage. Chazal, there's our sages talk about these kind of things through and through. So I'm grateful to have gone through the ringer, and I may go through the ringer another 100 times before my time is up. I don't know. What I do know is that I thought I had the tools, then I realized I didn't, and then I realized I actually do. And now they're actually in use. And putting those tools into use for the real things, the places where it really matters is what really matters. I have no idea what that had to do with the question you asked, but here we are.
As always, we arrive at the best. We arrive at the best conversation naturally.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we kind of meander around into these circuitous nowheres.
Yes. Okay, fine. We're gonna do fun round, quick round for a second. Okay. Question is, do you remember your trail name?
Of course.
And Also, do you remember mine? Possibly still, even after all these years?
Of course, of course. I will. I need to. Before I answer and give us our names. I mean, I'll just tell you. You're Abyss, and I'm Angel Eyes. I'll never forget that, and I think about it all the time. But I did learn this year, bumping into somebody on the Appalachian Trail somewhere north of Franconia Notch, that trail names are not chosen, they're kind of given onto you, and you can't ask to be given a trail name. It has to just be bestowed at the right time. So we have trail names, and we earned it in our own way, but it was not in the traditional Appalachian Trail sense. So one day we have to hit those couple thousand miles of trails together and then re-earn. I would take the same name any day, but re-earn it. Yeah, of course. You can't forget a name like that.
Lesson learned. I guess I'm just gonna have to copyright it in the meantime.
Yeah, go for it. Good times, good times. I remember where we were. I remember exactly where we were when we were dishing out those names. You and I were the only ones who really the name stuck. I think we made an attempt at bestowing names onto some of the other guys there, but it didn't last.
It didn't last. It only stuck because you actually look like Angel Eyes, like literally from the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean,
and you have the depth. You have them of a vast abyss.
Thank you. It's nice to have you pull me out of it sometimes. It's kind of a little, it's like a limbo. I'm like.
I've been in that pit plenty of times. The more I practice pulling myself out, maybe the better I can get at pulling some other people out. But then what I realized is I can't pull anybody out. I can help them pull themselves out. That's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you helped me pull my head out of my tuchus. So that's got it. But then again, you're only human. You can't solve everyone's problems, right?
That is true. I thought for many years that I could, and I realized thinking that was an attempt to avoid dealing with my own.
Yeah. The thought that comes to my mind is like I think we were like in a meadow. We were like on a field. We were on a trail. We were like up on like a plateau sort of, and it was like a stretch of like 0.8 of a mile, and we were walking, and there was a fork ahead of us that was kind of like an intersection on the trail. That's where my brain takes me when I'm thinking about when we're having a conversation about yeah.
Yeah,
For the
that's
trail.
it. If I'm not mistaken, it was in Vermont, and it was on our way. I'm pretty sure it was in Vermont. I could be wrong about that bit, but I remember it was a little bit overcast day, a little bit like in my mind it's like kind of in the morning, and it was a little bit damp still. And I remember just walking the usual deciduous trees at that elevation. It wasn't yet pines, and just carpets of ferns and nettles and whatever else was mixed in there, and that's where the conversation came up. Cool.
Okay. Oh yeah, I wanted to mix it up with a message for all of your campers and fellows that hiked with you and learned from you over the years. Send all of our special friends a message. Just send what you want, what you'd like them to hear. If you could speak to them all, if they're all with you there on that hike.
Back on that mountain.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we're on the side of Slide Mountain by the debris site that we built all the debris structures.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, that was a lovely spot. I still have not gone back there. I don't think it would be fun to try to figure out how to get back to that completely lost in the middle of the universe spot. Wow. If I were to give a message to the guys back from the day, this could be an entire episode in itself, and it wouldn't do justice to the amount of things I would want to say. But if I had to sum it up into 2 words, it would be shift happens. Because that's the truth, and that is the 2 words that seem to just evaporate from my mind last year. At a certain point in the depths of the challenges that I was facing, where everything kind of felt like energy was down, agency is out the window, obsessive thoughts about danger and death were everywhere. In the middle of all that, what felt like was actually happening was something up here broke. Whatever broke is not fixable, and shift can't happen. I am stuck. This is gonna go on. After the first week, I was like, okay, I'll get better next week. After the first month, I'll get better next month. This is going on for 8, 9, 10 months. You start thinking maybe something snapped. Maybe something's not going to change. Maybe shift can't happen. So if I were to do 2 words to the guys from Ace, Remote, from wherever, different Adventure Israel crew, it would just be shift happens. Like that you can create things differently in your life. There's a process. That process, just like adventuring, will inevitably involve taking risks. That risk might be just feeling the feeling.